You are most welcome along to the next instalment of our video mini-series where we are getting to know the NRLA, and in each episode we're looking at different departments of the NRLA, and today it is the turn of the Policy and Campaigns Department, and I'm joined by Chris Norris, who leads that department. So Chris, welcome along to our video mini-series. I think a good place to start is, you know, I've been a member of the NRLA for many, many years, and I regard the work that your department does as absolutely vital. So could you give us a bit of an overview of your department and the work you do and how it serves the membership?
Sure, yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I think it's one of the core pillars, really, of what any landlords association, particularly the NRLA, exists to do, is to represent our members. So my department is composed of our research arm, our policy, our public affairs, and our campaigning, as well actually as our media-facing colleagues. So what we try to do is we try to learn as much as we can about our members, about landlords out there and what's going on in the marketplace. And we try to shape policy and public policy decisions to favour our members and to favour the private rented sector. So, we do that by an awful lot of polling and research that I'm really pleased to say lots of members get involved in, and by trying to create kind of original content, original messages to give landlords a voice, because we all know that landlords are this disparate community, and actually it's quite difficult to get everyone speaking with a strong enough voice to really cut through and be heard.
I was going to ask you, actually, there are so many different issues and challenges and headwinds facing landlords. You obviously can't cover everything, so you have to prioritise the campaigns that you're going to do. You've mentioned that you poll the members, you have surveys. How do you prioritise those issues that you're going to actually campaign against?
Sure. With great difficulty, to be entirely frank. I think the biggest frustration we all have at the NRLA is that we can't do everything that our members want us to do. And we can't do everything that we'd like to do, because there are hundreds of issues, if not thousands of issues, frankly, that affect the way that our members go about running their businesses, or arguments, discussions that are going on out there in public that paint landlords in a bad light. And we'd like to address all of them. So what we try to do is listen to our members as much as we possibly can. And, you said there, we do some polling. We also hold lots and lots of meetings to get face to face with members and landlords. And we listen to them online. I hope there'll be comments under this video and we'll find out what people think about what we're prioritising at the moment. So we try to understand what emotionally is getting our members going the most, but also what's having the most practical impact. And then we have to balance, how we're going to focus our resources, and being realistic, what we think we have the best chance of actually affecting the outcome of. There are things out there like certain aspects of tax policy, for instance, which are probably right up there in the top 2, the top 3 of our members' priorities. But if we know that it's unlikely right now that we'll get a change, sometimes we have to focus on something else where we can get some kind of tangible outcome for the member, and then move on to those other issues at a later date. So it's about timing, it's about impact, it's about realistically what we can achieve.
And when you have these priorities, you then take them to the corridors of power, committee meetings, housing ministers. I know Ben's been at the Labour Party conference, the Conservative Party conference. You are very much engaging at a government level to make sure that the landlord's view is put across, as well as obviously engaging in the media and dealing with some of this dreadful anti-landlord rhetoric that we keep seeing.
Yeah, we like to say it's multi-channel, without getting into all the jargon. We have to make sure that we're talking to the political decision makers, and to make sure that their direction of travel fits with what landlords need, but also with those civil servants, those government officials who are implementing all of this work, and as well as the wider public via the media and via some of these direct social media channels, to make sure that everyone really understands that we're not just arguing for the sake of arguing. We're making the point that there are consequences of these decisions. There are consequences of painting landlords with this terrible anti-landlord rhetoric. And actually, the ultimate outcome will be less housing, more expensive housing, and landlords being driven out of business, which none of us want to see. So it's making sure that we get that message out across all the different channels to the right audiences.
And that is certainly a challenge, because you're up against the likes of Shelter and some of the tenant unions, and they appear to have very big budgets to do campaigning. So I can imagine that is a challenge. I know that your department, and I can imagine you yourself, are incredibly busy. Could you just sum up a typical day in your life, Chris? What might you be doing?
I've done this job with the NRLA and its predecessor for almost 16 years. And I think the reason that I've been able to stick around for that long is there's no typical day. It's a different challenge every single day. But I think the common themes will be a lot of engagement with our members. We get a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails from our members raising really interesting and sometimes really annoying and frustrating issues that we need to try and help them with. There's a degree of back and forth with those officials and those politicians. I think it's a rare day where we don't have some kind of conversation with a decision maker, whether that's a member of the House of Lords, a parliamentarian, MP, an official, a minister. So there are those conversations going on all the time. And then there's actually making sure that we communicate all that back out to our members. And all of that content that you see on the website, all of that content that gets tweeted and posted on Facebook, to try and make sure we carry people with us and we tell them what we're doing, is an equally important part of the day, because those members out there who hopefully are watching this video, they are the ones whose subscriptions pay for this work, and we need to make sure that we're acting on their behalf and they're understanding what we do.
Yes, well, you have your own blog on the NRLA website where you're updating what's your opinion and what's going on within your department, the work you're doing. And I think, we're also celebrating the relaunch of the NRLA YouTube channel this week. And I can see that this is going to be another channel of communication for you out to the wider landlord community. And actually, we've seen recently that one of the videos from the select committee where Ben was giving evidence, we've got that on the channel now as well. And I think it's so interesting to actually see the NRLA at work. So I think this is a really good way to continue getting the message out there. I think when it comes down to campaigning in any sector, it's very much a case of strength and numbers, isn't it? The more membership you have, the greater impact you can have.
It is. I mean, we're really fortunate. Post-merger, post the formation of the NRLA, we've got knocking on the door of 100,000 members out there, and that's a really powerful voice and a really credible voice. It gives us that credibility to speak to people. But we are talking on behalf of an industry of perhaps 2 million landlords. So, to a certain extent, it's a drop in the ocean. So the more the merrier, I think, in the NRLA community. But the more that we can talk to, the more of those members who are active, contributing members, members who come onto the website and tell us what they're thinking and give us feedback, are really, really valuable. Because, the first thing we get asked by every MP we meet, for instance, is, well, what's the membership look like? How many of you are there? What are they like? How many properties they got? What's affecting them? And that's what they want to hear. They don't really want to hear what Ben or I have got to say. They want to know what is affecting landlords. And the more that we've got on board in our community, the better.
Well, indeed, and at Property Tribes, we urge everybody to join the NRLA. As I said, strength in numbers. We need a voice. We need somebody countering the anti-landlord rhetoric in the MSM. And that's why everybody who's watching this, we encourage you to join the NRLA and add your voice to the swell of landlords. Now, Chris, we've had this revolving door of housing ministers and more junior ministers. That must make your work even more challenging, because just when you strike up a relationship and some rapport with one of these ministers, then they're suddenly gone. And we know that Eddie Hughes, who was the architect of the rental reform that was coming through, or is still supposedly coming through, we're not sure, he's gone as well. How challenging is it when these members of parliament and ministers just come and go?
Oh, it really is. I mean, I think I counted the other day. I was chatting to one of my counterparts at the department, and I think between us, we'd seen 18 housing ministers come and go. And it is difficult. You mentioned Eddie Hughes there. He he was really the caretaker, I suppose, of this programme because it's been going on for so long. I think it's difficult for us because we need to understand what the driving force is in that minister's mentality. You know, they've all got different things they want to focus on. We need to understand, you know, whether they are a minister that responds well to data or responds well to the emotive arguments. We need to understand what their kind of constituency case log looks like. But also we need to understand how long it's going to take them to get up to speed. You know, at the moment, we've got an entirely new cohort of ministers who've inherited this white paper and potentially a bill in the very near future. And, you know, all we can do, and all that the civil servants and the officials that work with them can do at the moment, is wait to find out which elements of that programme they're going to want to pursue, which elements might be thrown out. And we've all put an awful lot of effort in, and some of our members actually, in terms of writing to their MPs and writing to the government, put all that effort into trying to shape one programme, and it could be something completely different. And that's before you even throw into the fact that we could have an election around the corner and we could have a government of a completely different complexion. So I think you've got to, it's why it's so important for us to make sure that our arguments are based on the data. You know, they're empirical, they're defensible, they're credible. As long as we've got that and we've not just, you know, we've not fallen into the trap of just becoming buddies with a minister and getting them to understand on a personal level, as long as we're making coherent arguments, we can keep repeating that. But you're absolutely right. It's frustrating because you do feel like you're having the same conversations over and over again, and you are trying to convince people of the same arguments.
Well, it's certainly interesting times with Labour coming out with their housing charter. A lot of uncertainty about the future, but one thing we are 100% sure of is that housing does remain a very, very high priority for politicians. And that's, again, why the NRLA needs the support of the members. And that was really my final question, Chris. How can members support the important work you do? I mean, I'm assuming they can take part in surveys, they can write to their MP, they can take part in some of the consultations that have done the round recently. How can they really amplify the work that your department does?
Well, they can do all of those things you mentioned there. I mean, I think the best piece of advice I can give to any member at the moment is really to keep an eye on our website and keep an eye on the e-news and the bulletins that we send out, because things are changing so frequently that our ask to the members has to change as well. So hundreds of members have been incredibly helpful and have written to their MPs over the white paper. You know, now that we've got these new ministers in place, those messages might have to change a bit. We might need to ask people to repeat some of that activity, but also come along to our meetings, because you'll find out what's happening live there, and actually be workshopping some of those meetings, how you can go about meeting your MP, how you can go about talking to them and making the argument real for them. And also look out for our polling, because don't get me wrong, I know nobody really loves filling in long surveys. I mean, I certainly don't, but it's one of the most powerful weapons we have when we are coming up against that kind of populist rhetoric that some charities out there, some campaigning groups out there will use. If we can actually point to the empirical evidence of what is happening, and we get that from our members, we can't get that anywhere else, we can win the argument. If it's just us saying, well, you're wrong, you know, they can counter us. We need that participation from the members whenever possible.
Well, data is so important. You mentioned the regional reps there. We are going to be meeting one of the regional reps in this video series and finding out about the work that they do. But it's clear, Chris, that they're very important to feeding into your department as well. And I'm sure all the departments with the NRLA are all very closely linked. You're all cross-pollinating between each other. That's how I imagine it works.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And the reps are that fantastic conduit out to our members, because when we reach the scale of 99,000 members, however many we've got now, you know, we can't have that one-to-one interaction with them all. But if you're going along to your meetings, if you're talking to your local rep, you know, they can be that filter, they can be that conduit, they can tell us what's really going on out there for the people who don't want to do the surveys or don't want to pick up the phone and speak to us directly. So they are absolutely invaluable. And, you know, the meetings are really good value as well. So they're a great resource for the members.
Well, I have to say the NRLA membership to me is extremely good value. I'm a member of the Caravan and Motorhome Club, and I think it's about £60 a year. I think it's incredible value for money, very similar to what you can join the NRLA for, and it basically opens a whole new world for you on so many levels, as does the NRLA, in terms of being a landlord, your knowledge, your contacts, your understanding, your participation in events. So we do urge everybody to join the NRLA and be part of, they can actually be part of kind of formatting the policies going forward, can't they?
They absolutely can. I mean, we work with our membership, not just for them.
Awesome. Well, what a great note to end on, Chris. Thank you ever so much for joining me on this call. Really interesting to hear about your work. And I do urge everybody to stay tuned to our Getting to Know the NRLA week here, because we're going to be meeting more department heads and finding out about the work they do on your behalf. But for now, thank you to Chris, and thank you to you for watching.